What is up, guys? So pretty random, off the cuff type of video. So I was just on call. I'm still technically on call. I'm near like the last 20 minutes of my 24-hour call. So I've been up for 24 hours straight. And I've been taking calls like this, 24-hour calls, since I was doing internal medicine. And now I'm in my 4th year of radiology. And I just wanted to talk about what are my thoughts on 24-hour calls. And it might be a little bit controversial, but I think 24-hour calls are a good thing. And I know that a lot of people are thinking about getting rid of 24-hour calls, but I genuinely think it's a good thing. Now, hear me out. Like I said, I decided to make this video while I'm at my 23.5-hour time mark and closing out my current call. So this is me coming off of an actual 24-hour call from somebody that actually takes 24-hour call. And I've also taken 24-hour call, like I mentioned, in internal medicine as well as a radiologist, And in internal medicine or other clinical subspecialties where you're more on the front line and you're more patient-oriented, I absolutely support 24-hour calls, because in those scenarios, you are there the entire time. You've dealt with family members, you've admitted patients during your shift there, and you've pretty much been there from the beginning of their admission, and you've pretty much set them up on the right track. And just in case something happens, if family shows up after hours or anything drastically changes in their care, you're able to provide more consistent and reliable care because you were the doctor that either admitted them or operated on them or did the procedure on them, or you've been the doctor who's been taking care of them in the ICU. So it's just helpful for the patient as well as family, nursing, and other support staff if the doctor who's been there for 24 hours intimately really knows the patient before they hand off the situation. And it's been shown that most of the times when mistakes do occur or things fall through the cracks and things don't get conveyed properly, it's during the handoff time. And that's why doctors sometimes have longer shifts to minimize that. And doctors will work 12-hour shifts because that way you only have to hand off one time in the day or sign out, which means you hand off the information to the other doctor taking over. Now, in the field of radiology, it becomes a bit more tricky. I initially felt in my training that radiology was not conducive to 24-hour call because it's a very different workflow. Besides doing interventional radiology or intervention procedures, maybe some fluoroscopic procedures, you're pretty much, your time with the patient is spent on their imaging. When you're looking at an imaging study, you are essentially examining your patient. When you're looking at the chart and correlating clinically, looking at the labs and taking a look at the imaging study, that's your time to really examine the patient. And radiology is less of a team sport. You're not really working directly with other clinicians. Yes, you're helping other doctors because you're helping them solve the problems that they have for their patients. But you yourself are pretty much doing it essentially on your own. You're not really working together as a team. So because of that, you necessarily don't really need to be there for 24 hours because once you finish reading that scan and you put your all effort into that scan and you close that study out, you've pretty much done what you're supposed to be doing and you move on to the next patient. So in terms of when you're a more clinically focused specialty, in 24 hours, you may see X amount of patients, but you're intimately involved with all of them. In radiology, it's volume. In 24 hours, you can see significantly more patients at the same time that another doctor can see while they're working the 24-hour shift. And once you finish one patient, you move on to the next. So for radiology, it becomes a bit more challenging, but this is going to be a little bit controversial. I still think it's worthwhile. And what I tell my junior residents is that basically what you're doing over these 4 years is you're training yourself to be able to think clearly in situations where you may not have the energy and in situations where you're more likely to make errors, and you're practicing being able to open up a study at 3 in the morning after you've been here for 18 hours and still be able to practice using your search pattern and sticking to what you know to be able to provide optimal care by doing everything in the proper systematic way to take care of the patient. And that's a skill. It's not something you get naturally. You don't get it from medical school alone. And the only way you pick it up is through training. And although as an attending physician, when you graduate, you may not be working 24 hours, but then again, you may be working 24 hours, such as if you are in a surgical subspecialty. If you're in interventional radiology, you will be taking call overnight, and you may have to come in the middle of the night and be able to interpret an image and do a procedure. So you have to be able to think clearly in situations like that. And that's a skill you pick up now, and it translates into things in the future. And definitely I can say from doing call in internal medicine for 3 years, and those were 24-hour calls. And now this is my 4th year of radiology, and we also take 24-hour calls. It becomes easier. It becomes easier to be able to think clearly in situations like that. And so this is a training process. This is a learning process. You're teaching yourself how to overcome fatigue and overcome clouded judgment to be able to do what's best for the patient. And during residency, you're doing it under supervision. You still are the one making the decision, but you're not the one making the final decision. There's still somebody overlooking you who's had more experience than you. So it is the absolute best time to practice something like this. Even if you feel that you won't be taking 24-hour calls or you won't be working long shifts when you finish as an attending, it's still a very good skill to have, because from life in general, you may be tired, you may be fatigued, your mind might be in multiple different places because we all have to work and still maintain our private lives. So still the skills that you pick up now on the 24-hour shifts is still something that translates into helping you later in your career, even if you necessarily don't work 24-hour shifts. Also helps you when you translate this skill into other aspects of your life. If you're able to overcome fatigue and be disciplined enough to provide optimal care when you've been here for 24 hours, when you're tired, and when there's a lot of stress, these qualities can be taken into other aspects of your life and can actually help you succeed in multiple other areas of your life. So overall, it's tough. It is tough. Not going to deny it. Staying awake for this long and still being the best physician that you can be, it takes a toll on you. It does, 100%. But when you sit down objectively and just think about what you're gaining out of it, what the purpose is, and what this is training you for and what it's training you to do, I think you become a bit more grateful. So those are my thoughts. Might be controversial because I know a lot of people are sort of against doctors working longer hours. Wellness is a big thing. Burnout is a big thing. And I agree. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I think that stuff is very important. And it's true. Doctors do burn out more than other fields. And physician burnout is a big problem. Physician wellness is a big problem, and it does get overlooked. But at the same time, we made an agreement to put the patient first. And sometimes if you have physicians that are trained to overcome their own fatigue and still provide optimal care, that's, I think, what you need. You need physicians to be able to do that, because we are making decisions that are life-altering, and we are seeing patients at the absolute lowest and worst times of their lives. We're making diagnoses that not only change the situation for the patient, but sometimes you got to think about what kind of impact that's going to have for the patient's children, the patient's family. Sometimes the patient is the primary breadwinner, and he or she has a family to take care of, and then you discover a potential cancer, and you may not have seen it if you we're going through the study, but since you're thorough, and if you're fatigued, you may not have seen it. But if you're thorough, you catch it early, and it can completely change the trajectory of someone's life. If you catch a cancer early enough, there can be multiple treatment options, and if it gets caught later, sometimes a lot of treatment options provided by interventional radiology, surgery, oncology, radiation oncology, some options they miss out on because it was discovered too late. So the implications are immense, and because of that, the training is intense. So let's just leave it at that. I'm leaving hopefully in about 20 minutes or so, and those are my thoughts. Check out more videos. That's what the RadMed has to say tonight. So I'll see you again.